Hey guys, it's Alex. I'm sorry I'm late. I don't have. Hold on, let me clean this off. It looks like this is a little dirty. Um, Let me wipe it with an actual microfiber cloth. Okay, there we go. How is everybody doing tonight? As always, we'll wait for some people to trickle in. Maybe we'll look at the fish tank while that's going on. It's kind of been redone, reset up, rearranged. It's all sorts of Um, I'm late today. I apologize. I thought I was going to be streaming at 4:30, but my wife and I went down into the heart of the city, Seattle, downtown, and we were walking around, and my back just kind of gave out, and my legs weren't working right, and they can't really do anything about it right now. So sometimes all I can do is just kind of like grin and bear it, I guess, with the pain. Um, and I just fell asleep hard. So that's the truth. But let's talk about what we want to talk about tonight. If you guys are in the chat, feel free to ask questions. As always, this is a loose talk. It's a live stream. So, whatever. Feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about since it's a live stream. And basically today what I wanted to talk about is what if you're going to grow plants or fish, what do you want to start with? Like, what's a good entry point? And then if you're done with that, like, where do you go from there? Like, if you want to test yourself, if you want to make more money in the hobby or move up into bigger and better things in the hobby, maybe you don't have money on the side, like from your job for a big fish tank, but maybe if you're taking care of discus, which is a harder fish to spawn, uh, relatively. Now everybody's going to have a different opinion, and that opinion is going to be based on where you live, your water quality, the tank setup you have, and a lot of other things. Your life. Can you feed your fish once in the morning and once in the afternoon and once before bed? That would be a life where you can grow some pretty hardy fish. Do you have an auto feeder feeding 6 times a day and you feed them something else? I mean, you can bulk out and grow out fish, especially if you've got like a dedicated fish room. You can move a lot of water and you can do a lot. So it kind of depends on what you're working with, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that most people who are watching this channel have a couple aquariums, maybe a lot of aquariums, but most people don't have a wired fish room with all the running water and power from air, running the whole room from an air compressor. So I'm not gonna look at this at a production or I guess the level that level would be professional level. So I'm talking more hobby level. Something you could do with a couple 40s or some 20 longs and 10s, things like that. What is a good idea to grow and what's not. So just from my oh, and also let me say hi to everybody in here while we're getting started. Looks like some folks were here in the chat. So we got Trinity Tanks, Christy Hayes, Tetra Keeper, Water Wizard, Daniel Keeping Fish. I like that name. Pete Berlinski. G'day from Perth. Awesome. The most remote city in the world. I mean, Honolulu says that too, but I think no need to argue. They're both super remote, and Perth has less people. Um, let's see here. Scotland, hello. How's it going? Adonia Strongman, are you in Greece? Where are you? You're a Midwestern Buckeye. Oh, my wife is a Buckeye. She is from Columbus and, well, outside of it, Dublin. So, welcome to everybody. Oddball Aquatics, what is going on? And Naked Reefer, how's it going? So, welcome to the chat, everybody. We're going to be answering any questions you guys have but also I'll just keep going over this my thoughts on where is a good place to start. Jamie McDonald, welcome. Uh, just where is a good place to start if you're keeping fish? So for me, I think where you should start if you're keeping fish is honestly guppies and endlers. You you may not realize how much they have to teach us. You may have even kept them as a kid and think, oh, that's a kid fish. I can handle more than that. But they teach you to manage populations, they teach you about grow out times, and they're a really good fish, fish intentionally. They're a really good fish to just kind of, you go through the cycle and what's up, Max? Welcome. And yes, I'm glad you finally caught a live stream. Uh, so they're a good starter fish. All live bearers, I would say, can be a good starter fish. Mollies, platies, things like that. Barb, how's it going? Hello. Um, I think that guppies and endlers tend to be my favorite just because they're really colorful. That's really rewarding. You get to see how genetics work a little bit. And even if you don't care about the science end of genetics, you probably wouldn't be watching this channel if you're that kind of person. But if you don't care, that's fine. Uh, you learn it. You just learn it through osmosis, so to speak, by watching the guppies. So that's a good place to start with fish. I think the next spot I would go personally is rainbow fish. And that's one that's a newer one in the hobby as far as it goes. I mean, like, they've really only been around since the 80s in the hobby, um, in a accessible way. And around here, they weren't accessible until very recently, like 5, 10 years have we seen them in the outside of like local fish stores where there's a niche hobby in the area or something. But at Petco, PetSmart, did you see anything other than I'm going to go out there and say that any well, not any, but Pseudomugils in general, so like a Pseudomugil luminatus, Pseudomugil furcata, a Pseudomugil gertrude, those three are great starting fish. They're beautiful. The males will do all sorts of like courtship rituals and stuff like that, and so that's really cool. Where you get the two males showing uh, their love for the female, whatever it is, and showing off. Plus, they spawn almost daily, so you can collect eggs and practice that a lot. Because once you move on to a species that isn't um, you know, yeah, I agree, Max. It's the right one to do. So you know what? I don't need to show my face anymore. Why don't I show you what's going on in the tank behind me? And I'll just keep talking. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask, even if they're not related to this stream. That's the point of live stream, by the way, for people watching later. I put out videos on specific topics so that you can be informed on a specific topic. When it's a live stream, I'm hoping to cater to the people watching who decided to show up. And if they're taking their time to check this out, I'm taking my time to try to help them if I can with whatever they're chatting about. What's up, Kevin? How's it going? Okay, so we're going to flip around here. Nope. And we are going to just take a look at this fish tank, watch the fish swim while I chat about species to raise. So when I said endlers, let's scoot the light forward a little bit. So I recently redid this aquascape a little bit. You can probably see it's becoming collectoritis in all my tanks. I have too many cool plants now because of people in the hobby trading, mailing them, things like that. I'm really excited about this plant here that just looks like grass basically right now. It gets these purple and gold splotches on it. It's called Limnophilia bellum. So excited about that. Excited about this new type of red sword. Doesn't even have a scientific name yet. So I'm excited about it. It kind of looks like a head of like really nice fancy lettuce, but we'll see what it does. So I'm gonna say I was gonna say that yeah, green neon tetras. So I was gonna say that the next set of fish I think you can raise you can go two ways. You can go, I guess it's easier in the long run to have a fish that lays eggs and takes care of its babies, right? So that goes into the cichlid world. Right here are some cichlids. Now, other than keeping them fed, happy, and giving them the right habitat, which that sounds like, oh, that's all really easy stuff. I could do that. It There's more to it than that. You really have to lay out the tank so that there's spots where the males and females can hide. You have to lay out the tank so the which are now an inch long in this tank of my cribs, have a place to go but not get eaten. And then they have a little area that's a little more open but still shelter. Um, and yeah. So Christy says, I oddly have a hard time finding. Okay, I'm back. Everyone dumped out of the chat room, I think, so, or out of the feed, I think. Um, Let me flip this around again. All right, I don't know what happened there. I guess the internet decided I wasn't worthy of its presence. So really quick, just to answer a question from Stefano Vaca, should I get Economist Iguazu 2009? It's being sold near my house, but it's pretty expensive. I don't know if it's worth it. If you are really into the hobby and you love swords and stuff, get it. But they grow really slow and they're high maintenance, I guess, unless you have your tank set up for swords, you know. I just got some Purple Knight, which is cool. Some of the lighter swords, though, or really odd pigmentations, don't do their photosynthesis job as well as they should, so you really have to work on the water column first. So that would be one where, like, that would be a great plant if you have a tank dedicated to swords and it's a lot in the tank and it's a warmer tank with you're dosing it with ferts and stuff and you've got good light on it and it's a warm water tank. Then I would do that. But yeah. Oh, Pete. So Alex, I was thinking of getting Pseudomugil, but all of my tanks are open top scapes. In your experience, are they jumpers? Yes, Pete, they are big, big, big jumpers. They can jump. I had one, and this isn't like hyperbole. I had one jump like about 150 times its length. So it jumped out of this tank over here, and it landed all the way over by this couch over here. So they have the ability, they're like flying fish when they do jump. That being said, I've kept them in ADA style because I think they look beautiful. I lose one. What happens is they only do it when they get really spooked or if one of the males is chasing a female or two males are going ballistic on each other. And um, you kind of get that going. Um, like you see it before it's a real problem. You usually see that it's gonna be a problem because they're always flaring up, they're always fighting, and what that means is you need to put in more plants basically, or a couple more fish to diffuse that tension so that they're fighting more than just one on one. um, that's been my experience, and that would be my advice on that. As for another question here from J3, Scottish Aquatics, what's up, Scott? How's it going, man? I hope your night's going well. Just showing everyone this low-tech tank, kind of showing people. I just added some actual active substrate, ADA light to it, on top of the gravel. And I find that this may be my new favorite combo. So like half an inch to an inch of ADA, which is going to get mixed up with the substrate below, which is gravel, and then pea-size gravel all the way down to very small size, like little, like the smallest beads you've seen, size rocks. So just mixed gravel sizes works really well, and the plants stay in it really well. Um, so yeah, and this tank basically relies just on being blasted by floodlights, and I do use liquid ferts on it, but uh, Yeah, no CO2 on it. No, really, there's not too much other than like 120 gallon or something ridiculous hang off back that churns the water a lot. What's your opinion of CPDs? Are they compatible with other? Yes. So, Stefano, CPDs, I would say. Yeah, that's the same gravel, Scott. That's the same exact stuff that I use below the layer here, and then I do another fine layer of either like really coarse sand or gravel, and then now I've tried this and I love it because the roots are still gonna like draw nutrients as the dust of this stuff breaks down over time, but the air in the gravel doesn't allow. I mean, it has a lot of space for the roots to move without resistance. And then later on, they'll have a lot of surface area contact. But more than importantly, it's just near impossible to plant into this stuff with some of the smaller plants. Like if you have like that much root base, you have to literally bury it, and it's just a pain. So, um, let's see here. We've got another question that I have to add charcoal, or not, sorry, I have to add crushed coral, the opposite of charcoal, to a lot of my tanks to buffer the pH. Otherwise, it can crash. And when that happens, your tank will flip from like 7.5 to like 5.5, and your guppies will all die. Uh, but as long as you have buffered water, like if you lived in Chicago, your guppies, I mean, they can live in anywhere outside, like in ditches and things like that. So they're pretty hardy. That's why I recommend guppies, endlers, mollies, swordtails, platies, all those kind of fish. That should be your first fish when you're keeping fish. The second fish, you have a choice. In my opinion, you've got a tier which is cichlids who care for their babies, like dwarf cichlids, apistogramma, cribs, uh, a lot of the Rift Lake cichlids also care for their babies. Mouth brooders, things like that. Shell dwellers. Shellies are a really fun fish to keep. Uh, and that they kind of raise themselves when you set them up for success. And basically, you just have to observe and make sure the males and the females are pairing off. And if they're not, you may need to make arrangements. But that one is a step harder. And even though you may think, okay, well, I paid $40 each for these fish, and they're beautiful and they're nice fish. Um, oh, yeah, totally. Scott, I will go do that in just a minute now. So basically, you can ID, or sorry, he asked if I could ID some false Julia Corys downstairs, and I will in just a moment. When we head down there, I'll show you guys what the Trilineatus, which everyone sells as Julii corridoras. They're not. So I wanted to show you guys. I don't know if you can see this from far away, but hopefully they won't all run. These are the baby cribs now. They have grown up so quickly since Christmas. They've been eating a lot. Their parents have been taking care of them amazingly. But now you can see the parents have decided that they can go off on their own as long as they come back to their parents. And yeah, they're going to lose a couple. There's still some like scrawny ones that could get eaten. But this pack here, they're probably all way past the size of needing to worry about getting eaten. So I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like probably like 15 fish there that are all gonna make it now, as long as I don't really mess up somehow. They're all gonna make it and they're gonna grow into adults. That's pretty much been my observation with these. And so those are a great fish. They're fun, they're rewarding. The parents teach you how to take care of fish if you don't know. I mean, look it up online and stuff, but if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing as a fish keeper, actually getting these as your second tier or your next hardest type of fish to raise, I would recommend cribs. I think they're great fish. You can keep them in a 20, you can keep them in a 40. Deal is a 30 to a 40. If you got bigger than that, you want to probably keep multiple pairs. Otherwise, you want to keep them a little confined because then they kind of find each other more. And instead of male and female ending up going solitary, they cross paths enough that they try to form a pair bond. Those fish, once you get them to bond, like I said, all it's about is setting up their habitat. So that's why I said that there's two ways that you can kind of two directions you can go. So you can go that direction as your level 2 fish, or as your level 2 fish, you can go in the direction of like rainbows, like dwarf praycocks as they're known, rainbow fish, or pseudomugils, fork tails as they're called, or neon, red neon blue eyes as they call the luminatus species, and the Gertrude are what they call RU2s, which I have downstairs and I can show you guys too. Those ones are great because they're really your first introduction into spawning, not in not in a tank that's a community. They're not a fish. I mean, they're a fish that will occasionally have babies in a big community like this, but you really want to have a tank that's cleared out and you just put a mop in the corner. And that's your kind of introduction. I think rainbow fish are a great introduction to that, to checking spawning mops. And you just throw a mop in the corner, and every couple days you check it. Because every day, pseudomugils and praycocks rainbows lay at least one, like clockwork, egg as long as they're healthy. So get a couple females in there, and they do their own thing. So that's one route. That's if you want to go into the more intensive, like I'm going to start breeding in breeder only tanks. I have the room to set up more tanks. If you only have community tanks, stick with cichlids that take care of each other, like dwarf cichlids, smaller ones. So you can see the mother's still chasing off people or fish a little bit, but nothing crazy. Like the other day or a couple weeks ago, she was like Rambo, chasing away anybody who was near her babies. Now her babies are hanging out all the way over there. Um, but yeah, so the next fish I would say that you could try raising would be like plecos. And I would say the ancestris are a great one. Are a great one for uh, just trying to get your feet wet. They're another one that you can just let them take care of their babies. Now, with this next round of fish, I'm going to include corridoras, plecos, uh, almost any catfish. Uh, I guess you'd include those, and that would be your second to third tier breeding, and that, in my opinion, is an animal that lays eggs, guards those eggs, and cares for them a little bit, like enough till they're wigglers. And if you don't know, a lot of fish hatch from eggs, then they become wigglers, where they can't really swim, but they just hang out on the side of glass or they fall down into the substrate and hide. Um, and plecos specifically use caves. Now, I've had them spawn without caves. I've had them spawn in just a nook like this. But all you need is an adult male and female, and that's how you get plecos to mate. And this is the first fish where you're going to be doing water changes. So you're going to be doing water changes to spark their hatching, which is you can do that with rainbow fish and other fish, but to spark the hatching in Pseudomugil, or sorry guys, I've had a long day. To spark that hatching going on in the catfish realm, like quarries and some of the other ones. I'm trying to think. There's plecos, quarries, I guess whiptails, woodcats, all those kind of fish. Uh, the easier ones in those species you can breed by simply keeping them at the right pH, which is pretty simple. In the beginning, that may just mean having wood that puts out tannins. Now, there's extreme examples of this. I mean, you can breed panda cories or trilineatus or um, julii, sturbi. All those fish are really easy cories to breed. And as far as plecos go, and citrus are where you should start. Those are pretty easy to breed, as far as fish breeders would say, oh, that's an easy fish to breed. But really, that's probably your third step as a breeder would be to do those. And that's when you're going to be doing big, you do like a 50% water change. And you drop the water temperature 10%, and you drop the or you change the pH too. You bring the pH up, and basically that mimics the wet season, because in the dry season when it's hot out, the tank gets hot, the water levels go low, and the acidity raises in the water. That acidity, JH, what's up, man? How's it going? Must be late for you, or early. No, late. uh Someone has a question. Will ancestors breed if the pH is over 7.2? I'm gonna say it's less likely, but I've had them breed around neutral. You're gonna probably only see ancestors breeding at that. Something like the leopard frog plecos or zebra plecos, those get harder to breed. But there are a lot of plecos, and specifically all the bushy noses, the ancestris, like this guy here, this yellow guy. Um, those are all probably, if they've been raised in a tank with that pH, if they were hatched locally near you, they probably will survive being and will, happily hatch. So if they're wild caught, you're going to need to match their wild specs. After that, let's go downstairs. So yeah, you guys have seen now this scape here. While we're here, let me just go over really quick. I think I'm gonna save plants as a whole other subject, because fish has so much to talk about what's best for breeding when you're trying to get into getting more and more difficult. Um, I would say that a lot of people have interviewed and done videos with, including JH. You check out his channel, you guys. Have done work with Dean Tweedale, that's master breeder. I've been to his breeding room here in Seattle. Well, it's in Bellevue, but I've been there, and it is an incredible sight to see a master breeder really changing the pH, having an air filtration system and a temperature control and pH control for each stage of development, and a special food for each stage of development, and things to kill bacteria. That's like methylene blue. So there's a lot of stuff that you can get into, and you can make hatching. I mean, you could make raising endlers that high end if you wanted to, but there are some fish that you just simply can't get to produce any other way. So, like, at the far end of the spectrum, the hardest fish to get to reproduce would be something like these guys. These panda loaches are one that has not been reproduced in mass, and they're considered really hard to breed. Uh, I actually have lost a lot of mine, which I'm sad to say, but I'm real with you guys. This is his adult markings, and I still have a few adults in here, but they need water changes like every 3 days to stay alive. And they need oxygenation, they need special pH, and they also need microorganisms. So some fish need live food, and that's just to survive, but a lot of them need that to hatch for sure. So after we get past that second and third tier of, when I was saying like that's easy to take care of, we're going to get to the next tier, which is where you're really having to hatch baby brine shrimp. It's not that hard. Um, and I would say shrimp also are a really easy starter. They're not a fish, but they're a good start to do Neocaridina breeding. Is you don't have to do anything other than set up their habitat correctly, which I say very blasé, but for some people that can be a little tricky. And you just got to kind of learn, and with your water, figure out how hard that is to do. Um, but yeah, so in this tank, I have my more delicate hill stream species from Myanmar, Burma. And I've gotten these guys to. Oh, sorry, I scared them. these Somfongsi rasboras I've gotten to mate and have spawn, and then also these blue axelrod I have. But I'm gonna say we'll walk that into tier four. And tier four is when you really can't. I mean, there's a small chance that they're gonna hatch some eggs in here. More than likely, instead of that, they're gonna get eaten by all these other things. And you see this algae, I need to get rid of that. This tank's kind of been neglected. I have a home show coming up in my fish club where they're going around to check out everybody's tanks, and I've been kind of hitting it with the ferts and the light a little heavy on this tank, and then just doing algae patrol by hand to get the plants to really pop, and then I'll dial that all back the week of the show, or the week that they're coming to check out all the tanks. But yeah, so this is just a 17-gallon tank, and some of the fish in here have babies. You can set up, if you have enough flow, power heads, water being changed, the temperature being correct, the pH being correct, the right. With these guys, you literally have to have rocks with a south-facing edge. I don't know why. They're like, they have geomagnetism or something, but the only reports I've read is that they have rocks where there's a heavy flow coming over the edge of the rock. So when you feel with your finger on the edge of the rock, that's where they hang out. That's where they feed in the streams. And for some reason, it's southing the river. They're only from one river group, and they only live in a small stretch of it in China. So that's that. But that would be the hardest level. I don't know what to call that. Level 6 or something. Maybe level impossible. There's certain fish that, yes, people have gotten them to spawn a few in captivity. Bleeding heart tetras are one. I think barbs are another one. Certain barbs. Where people just haven't had a lot of luck. Stingrays are another hard one, but that's more just because of room. Some of these nano fish, people haven't really tried to raise a lot of the nano fish, and there's not a lot of resources on some of them. And that's where my interest lies in this coming year, is to raise these nano fish. I don't think you guys can see the color in this tank just because the LEDs cancel out the natural coloration. But there's some really cool colors going. There's that anubias pinto that Han Aquatics, that Han Tran sent me. Just a nice chunk of it. Goes well with like my little boost tree that has a dozen species. And in another episode, we'll go over my little rares collection here. But for now, we're just talking about the fish and going up levels in breeding fish. So I hope you can stay with me here as I go down the stairs. Boy, my hair looks crazy. I'm always looking crazy. As we come down to the fish room. So next level. So the next level, you're going to be getting into situations like this. Yes, I am a Dr. Pepper addict, but no, they're not filled with Dr. Pepper. They're actually filled with, what I do here is I've got live eel worms, or eel, this is what, I'm trying to see if you guys can see this. Vinegar eels. See if you can see any in this bottle. This one might be too hard to see. But this is live food. I have to get them live food, a lot of these smaller fish. These are my endlers. You can see they're going insane. I'm going to have to split the colony any day here unless some people want to buy some fry in my area. These are the kings and the sires. It's 1037 there. I guess that's not too bad. And then down here, this is a different subspecies of the axelrodi from Lake. This is called the green one. But to me, it looks like even more blue unless it's under a very, very specific natural light, like a cloudy day. But that's a different species than the one upstairs. And actually, I can say that it is because they come to the front. And so they are a very different behaving species, even though they look almost identical. Salem, no, that's not too far. No, that's fine. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk. Message me on either Facebook or email or something like that. There's a Facebook group with my name. I mean, I have my name out there really clearly, and my email is just alexanderjwilliamson@gmail.com. So J as in job. Uh, but yeah, so these two are my other strain. Those are level one. Now you can stay at level one for the rest of your life. Like Corey from Aquarium Co-op, he loves guppies. I love guppies. I love endlers. These are endlers, and I have just specifically been breeding these from the wild types that I had upstairs, and then crossing traits I wanted until I get a fish that's the one I wanted. So yeah, thank you, Pleco Pimp, for saying that you can find or that you can breed Ancestris in different pH. This tank right now is hovering at a 7.0 pH, and these green longfin green dragons are just almost big enough to be spawning. The males have started taking over the cave, and these are one that you can spawn by ignoring completely. I had a male that would lay under there. Sorry guys, this glass is dirty. I didn't see that before the lights. Co-op, aquariums in. Every local shop, even when they know better, just calls these things Corridor Julii, because that's what everybody in the mainstream hobby thinks of. But if you are in the hobby in our club, you may lose your mind over that fact that it just keeps getting perpetuated. I'm trying to show you guys, these guys have gotten so skittish, and I don't know why. They're tank raised. I hatched most of these myself in this tank. So Corridoras and Plecos, I hatched those together. I use the upper water with endlers, and then I just basically let these guys pick up the scraps. You see, you just give them a cave, and there's a female around here somewhere. And then there's some fry that are in it. I guess they're not fry anymore. They're 2.5 inches long. But there's other plecos hanging out in all my tanks. But here's here's a male here. And there's 2 females also. But they'll hang out. This is a 7.0 tank. If I want them to breed, if I wanted 150 baby plecos right now, which honestly I don't want that many of the green dragons. I want my leopard frog plecos, or one of the more pricey one, to be honest, that have smaller batches to spawn. But you could drop the pH. That being said, they were born like this. This is Greg Sage's line. And so they were born in the U.S. in a tank, probably with way higher than wild pH. So that's, that's one level of it. And then you get to another level of raising cories in here. I let all the algae grow on everything because I've got shrimp being bred in here. Couldn't stay, would super chat if I could. I'll message you about the endlers and watch this later. You're one of my favorite channels. Thank you so much, Ali. I appreciate that, and I will talk to you later. Have a good night. So in this tank here, I've got endlers up top. That's just kind of my combo. I just have too many strains of endlers that I love to keep. Actually, these are guppies. My apologies on the terminology there. But then down here, I know we went through a whole lot of stress trying to find one of the Venezuelan corridoras, but there's 6 Venezuelan corridoras in here hiding behind stuff, but you have to have catappa leaves and things like that. What's going to happen is I'm going to have to pull all these fish that like higher pH and harder water, and it's just going to be those catfish, the Venezuelan cories. And basically they're going to need a drop of pH down to about 5, which is a big drop if you haven't raised fish before. But getting it from a 7.2 where they're happy and they're just chilling and they may lay an egg or two, to get them to really breed, you got to really drop that, and you got to do like an 80% water change and leave them mops. This specific type of cory is said to want mops. So I mix real moss with fake mops, and I raised those also in 7.0 water. Didn't really change the pH much. And then also these little guys, these Habrosus corridoras, they totally will reproduce in water with the pH being around neutral, even though naturally they live in like really acidic water sometimes. But these little Habrosus corridoras, um, I've hatched those as well in that normal water. So don't feel limited by your water always, but don't fight your water too hard. If it's just not meant to be, it's just not meant to be. Now, when we come over here, these cories are just they I can't stop them from making babies. I set up this tank as a hill stream tank with a lot of flow coming this way most of the day, and you know it's just insane. You know what? I'm gonna put on a show for you. It's pretty cool to see when I put a one of these things, these Sarah Nips ONIP tabs. You'll see every fish in my tank in a sec here if I put one of, not everyone, but you'll probably get to see my plecos and everybody. So the next level of breeding up the chain, that's probably a 5, and that would be like discus. That would be some of the more obscure Rift Lake cichlids. That could be also the man. The color is awful on these live streams. I'm sorry, guys. You should know if you guys know what they look like normally. Like this is a bright blue fish. Let's see if we can maybe get some of the light off it. Does that help at all? Well, it's a bright blue fish. It's a bright sky blue fish, and it's showing up as nothing. But yeah, so I was talking about Pseudomugils. These are Pseudomugil Aru2s. They're a Pseudomugil Gertrude, and that's a great fish if you're wanting. That was like when I was saying level 1, 2, whatnot. That's a great level 2 fish to spawn. And what you do is you just put it in a tank like this, take out the plants and anything growing, and you just put a spawning mop into the tank. Now in this tank currently I'm raising these Metangsis danios, and these guys are jumpers, I've found out, but they breed really really fast, really well. All you have to do is give them the right tank and then take their babies away from them because they eat their babies. So as you go up the rungs in the ladder, as I say, of more and more difficult fish to breed, you usually do get more money for them. But the other thing that you have to consider is, so you've successfully raised the fry. That's awesome. Like that's a great step. But now you have to successfully grow them out. And some fish take months to grow out, like 9, 10. Some even take years. Here we go. So here's a baby. Here's a baby Corridora hanging out back in here. You'll see him come out in a sec. This is a baby Panda Corridora. These guys have a really creative Latin name, and that is Corridorus pandus. Or Panda, which is awesome. So you can see next to that Sturbis Corridora how small they are, but they look just like little adults. So these guys spawn every couple of weeks in my tank, like clockwork. I watch them, and I've shown it on this channel several times. They form a T. Here's more of my short fin green dragons, and then back there you can see my red long fin super reds. Of course, on here they just look like friggin' tan or something, but yeah, I really wish the streaming color quality was better. Like, bright orange bucket looks slightly peach. But, so then the next difficulty also would be like gouramis and some fish that spawn so small that you can't see the fry almost. And to be fair, rainbow fish have very, very, very small fry, and you do need to keep the water oxygenated. But if you keep hatching them, after a time, there'll be a time when you're okay. They'll be okay even if that's going down. Another one that I've found hard to hatch are these striped Myanmar loaches, these pygmy loaches. I get them to lay eggs. This is a big female right here. She's as big as they get. uh, and she just will simply uh, not do any more than that. She'll lay eggs and then they'll rot no matter what I do, even if I put methylene blue. So I'm gonna have to ask someone like Dean Tweedo or somebody who's raised them before. They're very new to the hobby, so there might be some little trick, but really I would need to go to the spot they're collected, which is not for sure known, uh, and see what the water's doing, take readings of the water. And that's really what's important to learn that. Also, another one that I thought was going to be difficult was these back here. If you see with the red and the long stripes linearly, these guys are Brazilian pencilfish with the red on them. And basically they've just bred on their own somewhat, and so they just do their own thing. And sometimes I cannot replicate why a fish breeds. I just try to make it an environment very close to their home with rocks and a cascading effect. uh, Rocks that half the day there's a heavy flow of water coming over. This tank has CO2 in it, by the way. Up here there's just a gnarly mess in this dead spot up here of every sort of pearlweed and branches and root balls, and just, I mean, it's not pretty, but that's where the babies hang out. And so you kind of have to decide, do you want a tank that looks flawless for staring at, or do you want one that makes fish? And like right here you can see I've got a baby that is going to be a Maytangsis danio, I believe. But I didn't put that fry in there. I've put a bunch of other fry in here that I've bred out in these boxes, and then in this box. Um, and to get them to breed, I have to get the water down to like 4.8 pH, and I have to add sphagnum moss. I have to add a very like uneven surface, and then I also need to feed them live food every day. I need to split up vendors into separate tanks here and here and keep them apart, feed them, and then I need to let them see each other. Like bettas are kind of like this. Then decide and get excited, and then you introduce them to each other after they've been fed really good food for a while. And that's a harder level fish. And then I would say fish that after that point you need to take the eggs away from the parents. That adds another step in the difficulty rating. And then from there, if it's a fish that needs a salinity change or a pH change for the fry to grow up healthy, that makes another level harder. And then beyond that, if they're teeny and they have a stage where they're just kind of larvae and lay around for a week or two, or their eggs for a really long time, then that would be the final hard stage to add to the mix, I would say. So that's kind of going up the ladder. Now, someone had a question here, and I want to answer it. Aaron, how's it going, man? So, I have an outside pond with at least the capacity of 713 American gallons. How many, white cloud minnows should I start with next spring? You know what would be fun is to start with 2 and just to see by the end of spring how many you had. But no, realistically, to have some fun, I would get something like let's see here, of the mountain cloud, the mountain minnows. So if you guys don't know, there's a couple kinds now. There's also there's longfin, there's shortfin, which is a variation that happened while raising them in captivity. But there are 2 locations where you can find white cloud mountain minnows, and those are in Vietnam and then up in China, in southern China. And I would say that if you put, so they say 6, buying 6, if all things are equal, Bearded Bob's Fish Room, what's up? How's it going? I like that you differentiate yourself from the other Bobs, Bearded Bob, because there are a lot of Bobs bobbing around in the hobby. Uh, but yeah, so I would say that you could start. I mean, you could, if you wanted, you could put 700 in there, but they're gonna have babies, and I would say that you should probably put like eight minimum in there just to get it going. But, I'd probably buy 20 and throw them in there just for fun. That it could very easily explode into like 1,000 by the end of summer, and I'm not being crazy here. If the bottom of the tank or if the bottom of the pond is right and everything, and they're happy and they're just doing their thing, they can produce very quickly. Now, reproduction cycles, they can really get going and go crazy. So, and inbreeding, surprisingly, I mean, yes, it does matter with fish, but a lot of the reason why we have like, you know, powder blue gouramis is not because someone pulled one out of the water that looked just like that. It's somebody saw a little bit of blue and then they're like, oh, its mom had some blue too. And then I'm going to raise the babies, breed them back with the mom. And then it doesn't matter who they are. I'm going to just keep breeding them back for color. And it's so much he's puking. Why? Why? Oh, now he's eating his puke, as you do. Uh, we're probably going to get demonetized for that. Thanks, fish. Uh, Another interesting little side note when we're talking about breeding fish is that, oh, Andy's going to go eat more. Great. Another interesting side note on breeding fish was I saw for the first time ever in breeding cribs, I saw about, I don't know, about 5 trips where the mother ate food and then went back into the cave and actually spit it out for her babies, which I didn't know they do. I've not read reports that they do, and I'd love to hear if anybody else has ever had their cribs do that. But yeah, they started doing that, which was kind of cool because they already take such good care of their babies that I found that neat. Let me get a light and show you what's going on here. Ugh, sorry guys, my legs are really bad. My back is literally still broken and they can't operate on it. You said you were aiming for 10 standard and 10 golden. Yeah, that would be an interesting mix. I would do that. I mean, there's no right answer. There's a wrong answer, and that's anything over like 500. Fish Tropic, what's up, man? How's it going, buddy? So in here, let's see if we can get them shown. Of course, now the tank's reflecting. These guys, if you can see the little babies swimming around here under the surface, these are about a month old now, and they're born at such a tiny size that it's like ridiculous. But they are the very, very endangered in the wild Somphongsi rasboras from upstairs. And then the bigger one, there's still 2 left in here that are bigger fry. See, there's the skinnier ones, and then there's the bigger set there. They're quite a bit broader. Those ones are from these Somphongsi. Sorry, guys, I'm a pig. There's a pigsty in here. These guys are really beautiful. If you can see the natural light on them ever, Metangsis danios or firebar danios, they have beautiful blue and bronze and purple, and they're just a really cool fish. This female, it looks like she's ready to lay eggs again. She's getting all wide and everything. Yeah, you know what, Barb? I'm sorry that it's buffering. Let me get closer to the internet one more time. But the real problem with this streaming on the weekends, which I know a lot of people like me to stream on the weekends because it's when they're around. But in my neighborhood, they haven't laid the fiber for it. There's too many darn people living in Seattle that are all techies, all people. And I'm not saying anything against that. I'm just saying that they're watching Netflix, they're on their phone, they're on their laptop. And in a lot of neighborhoods, you know, Comcast. Yeah, that's kind of the latter. I know that wasn't concise at all, but it's just kind of some structure for me to chat while you guys ask questions, while I kind of show you guys what's going on in my fish room each week. And that's kind of the point of this style of live stream. My other style of live stream is when I have more of a regimented plan of like, I'm talking about this and I won't answer any of your questions until the end kind of thing. But tonight is just laid back, just freewheeling, not using my little Quasimodo GoPro Moji. What the heck? Osmo DJ. Osmo. I don't even remember the name of the thing now. But the gimbal. And the thing is cool, but it is a little maddening until I get better at it. So I've been using it like not on anything important, just like taking pictures, using my phone and stuff like that, because getting used to the controls for like following a fish, it's terrible for following a fish. Great for following somebody. Um, yeah, exactly. Tetra Keeper. For people who don't like my um, style of live stream, just watch my other videos because there's no interruption there. I still do kind of get off topic. That's the whole point of this channel is that the hobby is a very multifaceted hobby, and there's all sorts of things that you need to learn if you really want to get into the hobby and understand the hobby. And you can choose to get as in depth as you want, but I choose to think about not just what the fish need, but where they come from, the political issues and moral issues associated with where they come from, and protecting their habitats and keeping them in the hobby, and the genetics of how it is that we pass on traits, so I'm not just wasting time, with my fish. And it helps to be really comprehensive about, maybe I'm talking about pea plants, and I get people complaining like, what do pea plants have to do with guppies? And the answer is a ton if you've ever done Punnett squares, which is basic biology class stuff. But I digress. Okay. Have you kept or bred CPDs? Any tips? Yeah, Peter, I have. Um, I am not the guy who should give you advice on CPDs. I love my CPDs. I have probably 40 around my house. They kind of hide a lot, and they're in my smaller tanks usually. I keep them at a lower pH. I have had them spawn when there's not a ton of fish in their tank. Um, and basically, CPDs, people say, like I said this earlier in this stream, actually, people say that they're easy to breed. Literally, the first three that arrived in America in 2006, no, 7, when they were discovered in Myanmar by the Western world, they had bred before the professor who was going to check them out had gotten to the tank, which is pretty crazy. Um, well, thanks, Barb, and Chris, that they can hide in, and a lot of spots for them to lay eggs, and then do a species-only tank if you're trying to breed them. Same with erythromicron; they're almost the same darn fish, um, and so yeah, that's my advice for both of those. I wish you guys could see color accurately. I'll post on them on Facebook how these tanks are looking right now with their full color and everything, because YouTube just does not do a good uh, job. Christine, I'm glad that this info is useful. Never be afraid to ask questions when you're entering this hobby. Everyone has to start somewhere, and I started. Oh, can I help you breed panda corridoras? Yeah, I can try. Um, what would you like to know, Tetra Keeper? Also, another type of fish that we could talk about keeping is killifish. And killifish are a whole other beast onto themselves in that they have a different way of a different style of reproduction. And that style is basically they have eggs that can totally come out of water and be in like moss and stuff like that, or dirt or mud, depending on the species. And you can literally like move them around for years in some cases, and then just add water, presto bango, and you have babies. And then other ones are like very specific. Like you need to wait till the full moon and do 3 circles around their eggs and then add water and then add, this and that. I'm getting out there, but you can get pretty extreme with the level of care of certain ones, but a lot of them are kind of fun and not a bad place. If you're a little experienced with breeding fish from eggs, that's another, like a second level of breeding fish with eggs. So Tetra Keeper, you have a tank set up already. So for Corydoras, what I always recommend is get the pH in the water to like at least 6.5. That's really like the sweet spot of where most common Corydoras will breed. And that you'll know if they're common because you were able to buy them without tracking them down. It's buffering again, really? I'm sorry, guys. I'll have to go over this in another video. I'll go over how to breed Cory specifically in a video another time. But let me just tell you the basics of most catfish and a lot of fish from the Amazon and from Southeast Asia. And that is they live and die by the wet and dry seasons. Not a 4-season cycle, but basically they have water. It gets acidic, the water level goes down, and then all of a sudden the rains come and the temperature drops and the water is clear. It's not acidic. It's low TDS all of a sudden. Maybe RO water, distilled water level, depends on the fish. And the best way to replicate that is to just keep your Corydoras for until they're adults, until they're 2 inches long, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches long, and looking rotund. And make sure you have a good size. They're a very social fish, and if you have like 10 Corydoras, they like that. It keeps the water oxygenated. All my tanks have a ridiculous amount of flow because of the CO2 going in. Like this one, I have overkill because it's a hill stream tank downstairs. It's overkill. So everything but my little breeders have like an air stone in one corner and a hang off the back and a sponge, like lots of flow and air. But there's no fish that's going to be mad that you gave it too much air. So don't worry about that if you're aerating your water. I might be wrong. If somebody knows that I'm wrong about that, tell me. But it's definitely not a common fish. Whatever would be mad about aerated water. Maybe like a licorice gourami or something that likes mud puddles. But for the Corydoras, put in rocks, sand, pieces of slate or chalk, like real slate, not fake chalkboard slate, but real slate and or smooth like rock granite that has a little bit of texture, but I mean smooth for the most part. And they will lay their eggs on that. That's what they do in the wild, or they bury them in the sand at night while the sand keeps them warm and an even temperature and keeps them safe from scavengers. And then once you see them laying eggs, you grab those eggs from them because they're catfish. They'll eat them. And then we can go from there once you get to that step. Also, a side note on cpds, the fish that is almost the same darn fish, it's from the same lake. This, as a lot of people know it, is the emerald dwarf rasbora, but it's actually a danio. And it is the erythromicron. And that's almost the same fish as a CPD. They can breed with each other, and they were all discovered in Lake Inle. Burma had a military dictator junta that was running the country for a long time, so we had no idea what was in there since like colonial days of British rule, like the West. I'm sure the locals were like, yeah, that's the blah 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 fish, and you stupid Westerners want to play with it, like what good is it? That's kind of the response a lot of these little fish, the nano fish, get from locals when they find out that Americans are coming, like paying thousands of dollars to come across the world and like grab this thing or one thing or another, and it's like the little fish they want, or the ones that aren't edible. Like to a lot of people who use these fish for subsistence, not these fish, but the fish in the locations they're at, they're like, you don't want me to take you to the big fish. Okay. And like, okay, there's something wrong with this person. Like, so it's just it's a matter of opinion, and it's also why I like collecting these little fish is because one, they get overlooked. People think of them as, oh, they're just little fish in the hobbies, but they are. I couldn't take it. The algae is driving me nuts. Noticing it. Um, they are overlooked, but that means they're overlooked for predation sometimes too, and people don't care if some little, like for instance, the mountain cloud minnows. People don't care if they go extinct in mainland China for the most part. You know? They're trying to protect these panda loaches now, but poachers are still going into the park, and it's a death sentence. But they still let people take these out of the park poaching, and uh, yeah, so I'm really hoping I can get mine to breed at some point. They like cooler temperatures, actually. This tank is right in the middle, so it's okay for them. But to get them to breed, I'm gonna have to kick some of the hot water lovers out of this tank. Those multi-striped pygmy loaches, they're gonna have to get out of there. The Phoenix rasboras are gonna have to get out of there, and that's it. Actually, the other ones can handle cold, but I'm talking 67 degrees. Right now it's like 74 or 5 in this tank, which should be okay for almost all tropical fish other than discus and a few plecos. So, all right, does anybody have any other questions tonight? I'm just curious. Yeah, exactly. Just like just like was said a minute ago by Pleco Pimp, for all catfish basically, and a lot of tropical fish, cold water change and then high protein abundance of food before that or after or both really helps separating the two genders if you can tell them apart. But this video, I don't have time to get into all of that. I do have a video about the mating position of Coriolis, and they form a T. It's called the T position, and it's where one headbutts the other in the belly. The male headbutts the female in the belly, and he's basically saying like, "I want those eggs," over and over, and being annoying. Uh, but yeah, so there's a video on that on my channel if you look for it, and I can try to help you more later. All right, let's see here. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Oh, Christine. Okay, so you've been keeping off and on for 54 years. That is impressive. Rad. Well, Christine, maybe you can tell me some history about fish. Like, let's talk sometime, Facebook or something. But, what I'm trying to bring more of to this channel is the history of the tools, too. I am interested in the history of where these fish came from, what the social climate is like there, why these fish were overlooked. How is it that these beautiful fish were not known of until 2007? Like, it's crazy. Oh, there was a military dictatorship who was killing everyone and wouldn't let Westerners in. Okay, makes sense. We didn't know about them. Uh, those things shape the hobby. The fact that the Congo right now we can't go into, now people are like, oh, we need to figure out how to raise puffers and other fish from the Congo, like stat. Brazil is not exporting plecos right now for the most part. I mean, there's probably going to be corruption and a way around it. And I already know there's fish coming out of Venezuela and out of Colombia that are Colombian fish. All of a sudden, fish that are never reported in like the Matea River or something are found 1,500 miles north of where they should be in the dense jungle, and they're like, no, we caught it here. Yeah, we're exporting it from here. So that a little of that goes on, and I think that's important to know too. Like, don't just turn a blind eye to that. Either decide that you're okay with that, and if that's you and your moral compass, that's fine. But for me, like, I don't feel good about fish that I think are being like black market plecoed fish, you know? And it sounds like kind of crazy, but there's cartels that control the fish industry for the most part. There are, you know, hobbyist enthusiasts that control the fish that come into the country on a small level, but that's a very small percentage. Most fish come through imperial, 5D, seagrass. Trying to think who else. You know, there's a bunch of importers. There's about seven of them that make up 95% of where the fish come from in this country. And so, you know, they set the prices, and it's kind of like OPEC and oil. They kind of decide the way things are going to go, and they decide the price of things. So I suggest if you're going to breed fish, back to breeding fish, breed something when you're learning that's a common fish, because that probably means it was easy to breed or it breeds a ton in the wild. So look up, figure out which ones are easy to breed in your tanks, and then work your way up that ladder over the years. And or you know, give a shot at a level 4. I'm just making up levels, but at a harder style fish and see how you do. And if you don't get anywhere, you can't get them to breed, maybe go back to rainbow fish and try a little trickier rainbow fish. Like if you were breeding Pseudomugil luminatus or Gertrude, maybe you want to go back to, or you go up to reticulatus, which has a like 16-day gestation period for the eggs. So it's hard to get those eggs to keep them tumbling in fresh water that whole time and not get them molding. Because a lot mold, even like Gary Lang, who I got my pseudomugils from personally in egg form and live fish form. Um, you know, he's like, well, some are going to rot, and that's why you don't put them right next to each other, because some get fungus, and that's just life. And, you know, you can minimize that extremely, but yeah. Oh, pleco pimp. Yeah. So I have been researching that really heavily. I'm glad you brought that up. So there is a dam in Brazil. It's near Sao Paulo, and it broke 2 days ago, and it killed. It's looking like 300 people, mostly workers for a mining company. Now, there was a dam breach in 2009, I want to say. I can't remember exactly what year. There's been a bunch because there's a lot of corruption in Brazil. But this specific dam, uh, it was a mining dam holding back a flood retention pond, which is actually like miles long lake, which they were using the water from to sort gold and I think copper and mercury, and I don't know. Brazil is very rich in minerals. I'm still trying to find out more information about that. But from the initial reports I'm hearing from, actually, I have a friend who lives in Sao Paulo, and from what I've heard, the officials are saying that it won't be as bad as the 2009 one. And that 2009 one, they use arsenic in and mercury to separate out gold. It's just I don't have time to explain it all, but it's used in a lot of developing nations uh, in order to extract gold ore from like poorer quality gold things. Um, and it broke 2 days ago, and that spilled out a lot of sludge and mud, and it ran all the way to the ocean, miles and miles, and so that probably ruined and suffocated all the fish from that point on. And I don't know what all fish live in that river, but it's pretty far south. It's well south of where like the dense tropical fish that we like in the hobby, like the plecos and things like that. But there's undoubtedly a lot of fish impacted. What they are, I have not put together yet. It's a river that I can't pronounce. Also, I think Pleco Pimp, you're talking about the hydroelectric dam too that there was an issue about. Um, are you talking about the one that the natives, the indigenous people, and Piaba and Ibama, those are two groups that are concerned with the amount of fish and things. They decide who gets to put dams where, and the government. basically said, let's dam a lot of the Amazon. We're going to be a completely fuel independent country, and they already use mostly ethanol for their cars. And so they've been able to be very, very, I mean, that's good for them in a lot of ways, you know, that they don't need to rely on foreign states for their fuel for most things. But the other side to that is when they start doing hydroelectric dams, just like we did here, it has some serious consequences. And in the case of Brazil, a lot of times it's like 10,000 indigenous tribes people. And I'm not saying that they don't live in the 21st century. A lot of these people have cell phones and satellite TV, but they still also live off the jungle and they subsist, you know, more than 50% off of what the jungle provides and off traditional food sources and things and fish and, you know, flora and fauna from the region. And they flood these jungles 50 feet with water. So maybe the wet season floods that much and they have houses on stilts and stuff. But these people are going to be refugees of a lot of areas. And so the indigenous people have been putting up a fight literally to the death with a lot of mining consortiums because a lot of times something will get billed as a hydroelectric project down there and really it is not. It is, I mean, that it will produce electricity, but what they really want is they want to be able to say, okay, well, that area is all flooded and messed up, and now we can mine this or that, or we can cut that forest before we flood the area, or we can use that worst kind of mining before they build that dam in 5 years from now. Now, one really good thing, if you like fish, is and indigenous people is that they have stopped the building of hydroelectric dams in the Amazon right now. That doesn't include Sao Paulo, it's not on the Amazon. But in Brazil, they're not building any more dams on the Amazon for now, or its tributaries. And that was said to be for because the indigenous people camped out on the dams and they fished from the dams and they went to the construction sites of other dams and they showed that you can't catch any fish in this area, you know, in their dugout canoes and things. There was like 20,000 people on this one dam. I mean, it's amazing. We don't see this in the news in America very often, but there's been a sustained effort for 20 years about this subject. And indigenous rights, the rights of people who literally within their generation were not contacted. And when I say uncontacted, I mean they were living in a world where, yes, they had trade goods coming in from the outside world. They knew what planes and cars were, and the word had gotten out. But they lived remotely enough that they weren't coming into contact with outside people, you know? And yes, exactly. So the one in the okay, so Plecopimp clarified. So yeah, yeah. Barb says they use 100% ethanol, and they are also tapping into their food source, which is not a good idea. No, and this isn't a bias from a Westerner. I have people who watch from Brazil, and I know you may think like I'm being harsh. Your country's really corrupt. I'm not saying my country doesn't have corruption, but Brazil is like infamous for it. There's a great film titled Mandabala. I'm sure it's biased too, but they have great information, and it's about the corruption in and crime in Brazil, and it's spelled Manda space Bala. And it's a great film. It's a documentary. And they start with a plastic surgeon because so many people are kidnapped there and have their ears cut off and sent to people for, like, we're serious, give us ransom money, that it's legal now. They go to a bulletproof car manufacturer and a bulletproof vest company. And then it starts working its way to like, how does this tie into the ghettos, the favelas there, and the government, and how they wasted, you know, $1 billion. And it's like, where did it go? Um, yeah. So it's just kind of crazy. It's a very corrupt country, and they'll admit that too. So but I don't mean to belittle the people of the country. It's just the political system is very corrupt. And the Pleco Pimp, yes, they were going to build a dam on. There's one on the Azako, I think that's how you say it, river branch of the Amazon. There's a few different branches. By the way, while I'm talking, I just noticed my coolie loaches are all coming out for one reason or another, and I like to watch them. So if they swim across the bottom again, I'll let you guys watch them. There's 7 of them in this tank. You wouldn't know it most of the time, but they're getting big. They're like 3 or 4 inches long. I didn't know that they would get this big, honestly. I've had coolie loaches in the past, and they didn't do this well. Like, they didn't grow this big. These guys have gotten like this long, some of them. So I don't know if it's a different collection point or just that they really love this tank set up with all like in fish that they're used to being with in the wild, other than those killifish and those the one tetras. Um, but yeah. What are they doing? My thing in ancient history, because I was trying to figure out how the heck anyway mankind is full of corruption. Let's see here. 15 years tyranny over Europe. I'm just saying. Oh yeah. Yeah, what are they doing? I mean, corruption is part of society. And I'm not here to cast blame or to say that anybody's country is worse or better than anyone else's inherently. I mean, maybe being fuel independent, not relying on oil, you would say that, oh, well, Brazil's better than the US because if all of a sudden the oil markets tanked, our economy would be just in shatters, even though we produce most of our own oil. But, gearing to that would be a problem. But maybe Brazil, it just depends on what the problem is. Like, and if there's no problem, then it's really easy to sit back and throw stones and say, well, they focused on this, and in the meantime, they destroyed their ecosystem. Well, America has nothing to. I can't, as an American, I cannot point fingers because we've ruined so many lakes and streams and things. It's just sad when you know that the Amazon, I mean, it's a developing country uh, there, and it's sad when you know that the biodiversity is so high. In our part of the world, in North America, the biodiversity is not quite as great. It's still very sad, but like the Colorado River, that's a ruined river. It's a dead river almost. And you can argue with me on that later, but um, I've done a lot of studying, been there, seeing as an anthropology and archaeology uh, student, reading about what they found there, the great civilizations that were there, and all the artifacts and all the animals that they named and caught and ID'd in the 60s before they flooded the areas in uh, sorry. Yeah, Christine, I realize I am ranting. I'm glad you like this rant. But, I mean, the areas that we flooded out down in Lake Mead, things like that, or the Salton Sea, I mean, there's just so many things uh, that we could, you know, go talk about in our own country too. So, me by pointing out what's going on in the hobby, uh, you know, isn't yeah, I just want people to know that if I talk about something that's not in my country, this isn't a nationalist thing. In fact, the only people pissing off, oh, thanks, I really like your 17-gallon nano tank. Yeah, thanks. I need to do some algae and moss patrol. The moss is growing out of control. I've had it with this GD moss on this MF plane. Also, I got a microscope out now. I mean, I've had it out, but this microscope, I've been looking at all sorts of algae and I've been killing it different ways. I know that sounds weird, but I'll put some pictures on the Facebook group. But I literally have been taking live algae in either little petri dishes or slides, and then I've been killing it with every kind of chemical I can think of and watching how it dies on a cellular level, how quick, and then also putting in copepods next to it so that I can see how it affects small life forms like little invertebrates, and then also there's going to be a time when I'll have to put like some sort of fish in there, probably some of my coal endlers, and I'll have to try it out in a tank. But this is how we're going to learn in this hobby, and I know that doesn't sound the most humane, but I'll probably try to find like a little guppy with like a broken back or something that is going to have to be put down no matter what, and he would probably be the one who would get tested. But I mean, somebody had to test first how we get hydrogen peroxide to kill blackbeard algae, for instance. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of cool stuff to do with the microscope. I've identified over 70 species of little different critters that live in the water in just my shrimp tank, which is pretty crazy. The one that's been set up the longest. I'm sure there's even more species in a tank like this, even though the bigger ones you don't see as much because the fish eat them. Like there's fish from all over the world, and they have eggs in their guts, in their stuff like that. So, yeah. But in any case, I'm getting way off topic. I'm glad you guys enjoy that are still here enjoy these rants and things. But I will be. These are all things I want to talk about. This is all why my channel exists. Um, I realize that in discussing this, we're going to run into that. Yeah, and the other thing is the country that I probably offend the most is the US by what US people think. What the comments I get. I mean, I have 50% of my viewers are in the US, which actually surprises me. That's a lot of people are watching from outside the country, and I thank you so much. Thanks, guys. Um, but yeah, a lot of people are upset because I'll say something like our trade war with China is going to cost us 25% more on trade on items coming in from China if we impose the tariff, and they're like, "Why do you hate America? Why do you hate Trump?" And I'm like, "It's not about that. It's just that's what's going to happen. Even if you no matter what school of economics you believe in, that will happen." And it has. I mean, that's happened since I said that on this channel and got told that I hate America. I lost like 200 some subscribers over saying that the trade war was going to affect the aquarium hobby. It's a no-brainer. A lot of our stuff's made in China, guys. Um, but in any case, I'll stop before I get myself into more trouble. And thanks, you guys. You guys are all for the algae killing tests. Yeah, me too. And for me, like blackbeard algae and like really like bristly algae and stuff like that. Oh, I do not have Barb. I do not have the real Julie corridors right now. I sold all mine and then I gave the rest to my buddy Ben. Um, but that may be changing soon. So aquatic arts, you know that I do stuff with them. We're talking literally tomorrow in the morning. It'll probably be 3 a.m. my time because he gets in the office at 6. But I'm like, call me whenever you want. If it involves fish, I'm like, yeah, call me. Uh, and we may be discussing a new venture. Redacted XX, thank you. Good to see you in the chat room. Tetra Keeper, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say you won't ever unsubscribe. Follow your heart. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Brazil, back to the damn thing before I leave. Back to the damn thing. Back to building dams. Hydroelectric dams, that is. Yes, they already screwed up Ixtapa River, and there's like 4 or 5 that they've royally screwed up and they've turned into lakes. The zebra pleco, I don't remember for sure if they finished building that dam and it was the last dam for now. But so Brazil, what I was going to say about their corruption and their way they treat indigenous people. So the company that got to build all the hydroelectric dams and got all the mining consortium deals to divvy up was a Brazilian company. They sold a lot of mining deals to the US, to Australia, and to South Africa. That's who does the big mining and follows arguably international standards, which helps save rivers. It's very arguable whether they actually follow all these things, and I fully admit that those are probably American companies, South African companies, Australian companies. They're going to be better than the illegal miners that are there that are putting mercury and arsenic straight into the river. But the other mining companies do build dams, they do put silt into the rivers, and there are supposed to be laws in place that limit that because a lot of people live off the rivers. The river is life in the Amazon. It's a huge area. It's like half the United States or more rely on this river as like their highway, as their food source, as everything. And um, the government said, "We're done building dams. The indigenous people have won. We hear you loud and clear, and we're done." Well, it turns out that the company that was building the dams went bankrupt and they built a bunch of dams wrong without the right rebar and stuff, and they're probably going to collapse in the future, anyways. Um, which is a whole other terrible problem. But if you go searching online, you can find information on it. So, did the indigenous people win and the people who love the environment and fish win? Or did some corrupt thing just happen where, like, it didn't work out and they, were like, we're going to do something else? Um, oh, Redacted XX, thanks. I appreciate that. I would like that if he says, let's see, we say, sorry guys, looking at the chat. Aquaballs, what's up? About to get off. Cody Sun, what's up? Uh, Redacted XX, I'm picking out some bettas for you. No, a male and a female betta would be great. I'd love to play with breeding some bettas. That would be very fun for me. I've never bred bettas, actually. So, yeah, a male and a female would be rad. Thank you. I'll probably keep them in like smaller tanks than my other fish. I might keep them in like a 2 gallon each with like aeration and stuff like that. I know a lot of people say you should put them in a 5 gallon. They'll be okay, especially if you're breeding them. Then I'll throw them back in a bigger tank. But, um, another really cool channel while we're on this topic of developing nations and whatever. I don't know. I don't know how I got to this point. I'm sorry. If you guys are watching this after the fact, you're probably so fed up with me at this point of just like, what are you talking about, Alex? But the channel Dexter's World. Dexter, Dexter, and then his world, Dexter's World. And it's about aquarium and pet keeping in the Philippines. And it's in on the grid, but there's a lot of parts of his area where he's going through some of the poorer neighborhoods and he has friends and things that they're breeding incredible fish in like a gutter, literally a piece of gutter pipe with like a bicycle that you have to ride to make aeration every few hours. And like there's these little 4-year-old kids that are just like getting their exercise and aerating the tanks at the same time. Just innovative, crazy, awesome stuff. That to them is just normal life. It's just like, oh, we can't go to the store and buy X, Y, or Z, so we just make it. We see that it exists on the internet, we learn how it works, and then we make our own for cheap or free. And I've gotten some ideas from his channel. The Americans could be a lot more, yeah. Um, let's see here. I'm just reading comments, sorry. But yeah, we can learn a lot from the developing nations about fish keeping, even. They know how to raise and breed fish that we don't frequently, and it works out better for them sometimes than it does with all of our fancy gear. Um, oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, so another the Z, you're talking about corruption and white or I guess dominant rich folks in Brazil that tend to be light skinned versus the indigenous people and the almost like race war that goes on. Brazil is a very, very mixed country. I think it may be, maybe South Africa might be, but it may be like the most mixed country as far as like there's 200,000 or 300,000 Japanese people there. There's a bunch of Arabs there. There's a bunch of Indians there, and there's a bunch of Amerindians there, and African American former slaves. There's a lot of white Spaniards. There's Germans. There's people from all over. And the lighter the skin, the better the privilege historically there from the slave system. And they ended slavery earlier than most places because it was easy to escape into the jungle and join a tribe. There's a really cool story about a runaway slave place there. Also, Haiti's another one where the slave was revolted um, and were able to mix in society somewhat more. But then you run into this problem where whites and blacks, or in group versus out group, are fighting, and there's no easy answer. I can't, as a white person, I can't say anything about what I know about being darker skinned or of color or being an indigenous person, being oppressed. I don't know. I just don't know what that's like. But I feel for them. And there are areas like in the Philippines too, where, for instance, the president is calling for people to kill drug dealers, and they've killed like thousands and thousands of people without a trial or anything. They're just like, oh, that guy deals pot, or that guy deals meth, or whatever it is, and they're just killing their political rivals in mass. And so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that show Dexter's World, the Fish Channel, is there, and so I don't know how I got so off subject, but it's in the Philippines, and it just shows you that like there's fish keepers all around the world doing it no matter how primitively they have to. But check out Dexter's World. Tell him I told you to check it out. Um, and I'm gonna get off this live cast because I've been on it a long time and I've rambled a long time, but I've had a good time with those of you present. And for those of you in the future, if you make it this far and you didn't like it, you can hit thumbs down, but that's very bizarre that you hung out for an hour and 45 minutes with us when really these live casts are a chance for me to chat with those of you who want to stick around, and the conversation will go where the conversation goes. Uh, yeah, I think you're right, Barb, that the weather on their side of the Philippines, there's like windward and leeward sides of islands usually, and they've got monsoon season and things like that, but they also have free heaters. They don't need those. And water's free essentially where he's at. Vexing Cat, what is up? Welcome. Uh, I'm just signing off. I feel like that happens all the time with you popping in here, so I'm sorry. I apologize. Congratulations. I hope Aquatic Arts has gotten a hold of you. If they have not, because Bill, the guy who's in charge of all of the contest stuff, if he's not gotten a hold of you, Vexen Cat, let me know on email, and I'll talk to him. But he's been very sick, or he's been sick the last couple days. We're supposed to have a meeting tomorrow, though, on the phone or Skype. So uh, I got to go to bed on that note because the meeting's at 3 a.m. my time, 6 a.m. East Coast time. So I will talk to you guys later. Aquaballs, if you're tuning into this channel, I would like to hang out with you also. Anybody who's stuck around this far into this cast, clearly someone I would get along with, because you're not all arguing with me about things. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll get to meet more of you in the future. I'm hopefully going to go to the aquatic experience this coming year. I don't know if we'll be able to. Medical bills are just nuts, with dental and medical, but yeah. Um, yeah. All right, you guys. Take care. Be kind to each other. Live the now, looking towards the future the way you want it to be. And I will talk to you guys later. Tetra Keeper, I don't know yet. I'll talk to you later. Take care, everybody. Tetra Keeper, if you need help with those Cory pandas, we can talk more in depth. But check out my video on like mating position of corridors, or look up corridors on my channel, like in my videos. I think I have 300 videos now, which is kind of a crazy thought, but it'll be a really fun diary of how this year went. You know, it has been to look back and think, wow, man, that was before I got hit by lightning. That was before this or that. Like, my life has unfolded with this channel insanely. Like, I went from finding out I had lupus to getting hit by lightning and having just, you know, been married for a year and a half or whatever when I started the channel to now we're into almost 3 years of marriage as in a, oh no, we already are. Oops. And so yeah, I mean, my life's unfolded with this channel in a way. I mean, a lot of years of life before this, but this has been kind of a rebirth, and I've kind of marked it with this channel. So it's fun to make new friends on this channel. A lot of you guys have become friends in real life. A lot of us talk. So don't be afraid to reach out if you have questions that I can't handle in this time here. So, all right, guys, take care. Have a good night and be kind to one another. Bye. Thank you, Mr. Science Geek. I saw that right as I was about to sign off. I'm sorry I'm going to sign off. I've been on for almost 2 hours already. I would love you to catch another stream in the near future. Uh, let's see here. We'll talk. Dexter has a friend who is raising guppies in laid back refrigerators. Dead ones, obviously. That's a big tank. Yeah, that's really crazy. The way he raises goldfish, too, like collects goldfish eggs, and they use like trash bags and stuff. Dexter's World is a trip if you want to see raising fish and owning a fish store in a third world or developing nation. The Philippines has first world status in some cities, and in others, it's like the dark ages. So, and then in others, it's like tribal, great. Some's Islam, some's Catholic. You can't call any country one place usually. So, yeah. All right, you guys, take care. I'm going to get stuck on another rant if you guys keep talking like we're just hanging out in a room together. You guys are just doing that to me. But I do care about all you guys. Uh, as hard as that is, whenever I see a new name or whenever someone pops in and says hi, I think like, cool. I'm interested in that person, and I hope they're enjoying themselves and expressing what they would like to hear next. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Check it out on Facebook. Don't forget to like. We don't have any likes on this, so if you guys could click a like, I would like that. Oh, no, whoa, 21 likes just appeared. That was weird. It said 0. Also, it says that I have 2 people in the chat room, which is watching, which is clearly not true. So, I don't know. YouTube be tripping. Talk to you guys later. Have a good night. Take care.